Hi, my name is Robin LaCroix, and I'm a dietitian from the VA Medical Center in White River Junction, Vermont. I'm here today to make the unstuffed pepper skillet. So I'm going to get started by heating up a medium-sized skillet over medium heat. And to the skillet, I'm going to add a tablespoon of oil, either olive oil or canola oil, any heart-healthy oil that is going to handle a bit of heat here. So we're going to give that a minute or two to heat up. Your oil should be able to easily move around your pan and have a little shimmer to it. And then to that, we're going to add ground turkey or ground chicken. You could also use either tofu or a vegetarian meat alternative if you prefer that. So I am going to cut my recipe in half today, but I'm going to give you the full amounts based on the recipe that you're provided. So the full amount calls for 1 pound of ground turkey. And my oil's hot here. All right, so I'll get my ground turkey in the pan. Okay, and anytime our utensils or our hands have touched ground meat or raw meat, I want to give them a good wash. And the meat is going to cook for about 6 to 8 minutes. So we're going to let that cook. We'll kind of keep chopping it as if you were making taco meat or regular ground meat. And then we'll move on to the next step. Our meat has been cooking for about 6 to 8 minutes. You'll notice it's nicely browned. This is still going to cook for a while, so if you still have a little pink, it's not going to be a concern at all. So now we're going to add our rice. We are adding dry rice directly to the pan. So the recipe calls for half a cup of quick cooking brown rice. The quick cooking will give the dish an ability to be done in about 20 minutes or so. If you use like a 45-minute long cooked rice, the vegetables will get quite soft. So just be aware of that cooking time. So you're just going to sprinkle the dry rice right in here. And we're going to let that cook for 2 minutes. The rice is just going to toast a little bit as we get ready to put our other ingredients in. It calls for a 14-ounce can of no salt added diced tomatoes. So I'm actually using diced tomatoes with green chilies, which is going to give it a little heat, which I really enjoy. And then it also calls for an 8-ounce can of tomato sauce. I'm using 8 ounces of tomato sauce, but this is just a tomato sauce. It's just a leftover kind of spaghetti sauce that I had, which is going to work fine. Again, there's a little more sodium in here than there would be in a no salt added tomato sauce, so feel free to choose the option that works best for you. We are also going to use a cup of low sodium beef broth. So I've made a cup of beef broth here using a stock product. So this is a beef stock that you just take a teaspoon and you mix it with water. It's a really nice way to get a cup of broth in a recipe without having to buy a whole can or a whole jar. All right, so I'm going to add my tomatoes here. And tomato sauce. And then beef broth. So again, I'm giving you the volumes for the full recipe, which is 1 cup. You'll notice me just putting in a little bit less because I'm cutting mine down a bit. But the recipe will guide you. All right, so to this, we are going to add our bell peppers. So it calls for a medium red bell pepper diced and a medium yellow or orange bell pepper diced. So again, I'm using orange. You can use any combination here. So 2 total bell peppers. And then a medium onion diced. So I have a cup of onion diced right here that's going to go in. So we have all this flavor of a stuffed pepper here. Now a tablespoon of brown sugar. Again, it might seem a little abnormal to see a sugar in a recipe like this, but it really balances the acidity of the tomatoes really nicely and gives it a nice sweetness. And a teaspoon of dried Italian seasoning. A teaspoon of ground black pepper. And a dash of cayenne. All right, so we're gonna get all of this mixed up. And it will be a little bit on the soupy side, which is exactly how it should look. It's looking and smelling great. So what we do now is we turn, we're gonna bring it to a simmer and then we're gonna turn down the heat and cover it. And you wanna give it a stir every 5 to 10 minutes to avoid sticking on the bottom, but this is gonna give the rice the ability to cook and the peppers and the onions the ability to cook. It probably needs about 20 to 25 minutes for that rice to be cooked and the vegetables to be fully cooked. So just check it as you go along and you stir it every 5 to 10 minutes to see where it's at. All right, so my unstuffed pepper skillet has been cooking for about 20 minutes, and I tested it and the rice is done. I did give it a stir about 2 to 3 times in that cooking time. I did want to show you that my pan that is this size does not have a lid, so I just used tin foil and that can work really well. So if you have that same option, there's just one other idea for you. So you'll notice our consistency now is kind of nice and creamy and saucy. Most of the liquid is absorbed here. And our last step is to add 3/4 of a cup of a Italian or cheddar cheese, some sort of shredded cheese, whatever you like. And we're just gonna sprinkle that right over the top. You don't have to do the cheese, you know, if you don't do dairy, you can just leave that out. If you do like cheese, it's a great addition here. And we're just gonna let that sit for a couple minutes as the cheese melts. So some great things about this dish. One, you have all of your food groups in one pan. So we have our onions and our peppers, we have protein from the ground meat, and we have our starch from the rice. If you use a whole grain rice, you're gonna get a little bit of extra fiber. This serves really nicely with a salad. And I think it's a little bit easier than a stuffed pepper, just in terms of getting everything in the pan and covering it and letting it cook. So you have that option as well. I often hear from people that they like stuffed peppers, but they end up not eating the pepper, and this is a nice way to have the pepper in there and get that taste and texture just in a little bit of a different way. So hope you enjoyed this, hope you give it a try, and thanks for watching.